Lo que quería hoy es hablarles de lo obvio. La verdad que para lo obvio a veces hay poco espacio.
I'm not going to talk about the obvious because there's not a lot of space for the obvious. Sometimes you have more space for theories and elevated topics, but the obvious are sometimes issues that can change the quality of our lives and the sense of our life. So I'm going to talk about one grain of sand in the beach of life that has to do with working under pressure. When we started working on reimagining the museum, everything that Tipa does for me is really important and really significant. So I started to think about reimagining and recreating, but I couldn't come with a topic that I wanted to talk about. Sometimes we need to think under pressure, and I said, okay, I'm going to talk about that. My interlocutor said it's going to be really interesting, even though I didn't think so at the beginning. First of all, I started to think that when everything is for yesterday, this is like climate change, and there are no visual arts department in education. It seems as if we are working in the middle of a very peaceful climate, and then all of a sudden there's a change of the wind, and all of a sudden you have to start working on getting things ready now. And when you have these two currents coming together, you get the lightning of the storm, and that's the time when we need to work under pressure. It is interesting to think that I'm not here to point fingers at anybody because there are no good or bad sides here. But this happens as a symptom of something in the culture. There's a theoretician of education, David Perkins, who says resistance to change in a school is not on the part of the students or the teachers, but on the school culture. So thinking under pressure has to do with institutional cultures. So some images that came to me when I thought about these times when I try to go through, the first image has to do with catching the ball, not throwing it at someone else. You are in a bottleneck, okay, let's catch the ball. You have to think about your context. You're not a surgeon and no one is going to die, or you're not a plane pilot, but I try to work in building a consensual bond. I brought this image because at some point I was working on a project for 20 schools, and we had 2 projectors like this, and one of the people said, I'm going to deliver the projectors to the schools, and he couldn't do it. So we needed to know about logistics and school logistics. It's not just knowing about the discipline of art, but the pedagogy of art. This is the big enemy that we have when it comes to thinking under pressure, which is called the monster. This is the name that I give it. We always want to have the solution when someone asks for a project, but when you are in a hurry and you're not able to put together systems of thought, you put together a monster, and those monsters end up being your enemies. I'm not going to give you any examples of particular monsters. You can think of the ones that you want. The point is, in order to fight the monster, we need to have a direction, but not a rigid direction. It has to be something like a weed that will bend. And the big point is to make air a fad. I know it sounds crazy, but making air fashionable has to do with having a space where you plan air spaces for your work, exchange spaces, and spaces that have to do with timing and processes, and spaces that have to do with silence. spaces that have to do with the value of what's material and what's immaterial, and respect for other departments working at their own pace, spaces that have to work with humor, and the creation of wisdom cultures that do not only think about the visitors, but also think about the capacity of buildings, these air spaces, systematically outside and inside the museums. And I think that's how we are going to be able to go through these pressure periods. Thank you.